Thank you for tuning in. In our latest expert series, Alexander Moens discusses the challenges Russia and China pose to NATO solidarity. In particular, he touches on the implications of China coming closer to the national interest of Europe's NATO members and the demands it is placing on NATO. Moens posits that what to do vis-a-vis China and Russia are NATO's two most important questions in the short to medium. He suggests that Canada's position on these matters is currently vague and that we must do more strategic thinking to determine our policies towards China and specifically the Indo-Pacific. Here's an excerpt from our discussion.
By virtue of its need to move by consensus, the alliance as a whole is going to move incrementally and very slowly. It is, of course, a gigantic undertaking to consider China an adversary. The consequences of such an approach for Europe, indeed, as we consider the same thing in Canada, are so huge because the economic, political, military future of China rapidly moving towards world power, possibly world dominant power status. So to identify your relationship with such a power as adversarial, you really want to know what you're doing. At the same time, if you look at the threat that China poses increasingly to NATO's global partners, NATO is going to find itself in a bit of a dilemma. And the need that these global partners have is not for mere cooperative security. The need is for substantial security cooperation. And therefore, the demands on NATO will continue to increase. A wise Secretary General will try to move NATO more and more into dealing with those real risks. But the alliance will move very incrementally. To summarize it all, in my analysis, what NATO will do vis-a-vis China is its most important question, medium and long term. Arguably, its most important question in short run, medium run, is how to deal with Russia, particularly Russia, Ukraine, Russia, Baltics, Russia, and South. But in the medium long term, it's really, will NATO play a role in the international constellation of powers vis-a-vis China or not? That's the grand question that NATO is facing, and it wants to deal with it as slowly as possible. I'm just hoping that especially Canadian political leaders, increasingly realize that, like some European partners, our policy vis-a-vis both Russia and China is rather uncertain and rather vague and rather unfinished. So although we are not a major player in NATO, like the United States, we are hesitating at the political level about what is our position vis-a-vis China and in the long run and Russia in the short run. Canada's stake in Ukraine is so high that 200 soldiers may not quite do it. We might have to think, how can we be more influential? And in China, on the case of China, not only have we seen in our own case the two Michaels crisis, but we have seen what happens to Australia. And we need clear strategic direction of what Canadian security and defense policy in the Indo-Pacific and Asia-Pacific is.